If you think that massive global megacorporations occupying and running significant chunks of the planet and operating their own heavily armoured military forces are a thing of cyberpunk dystopias, let me introduce you to the wooden canvas original real-life example, the East India Company. Having conquered and occupied large portions of what are today India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, as well as various other parts of southeastern Asia, sometimes with the aid and assistance of the British government and sometimes entirely against the said government's wishes, in the late 18th century, the East India Company discovered it had a significant trade imbalance with China. Driven in large part by the British population having discovered China had tea, and responding with,
"Sir, I insist you give me the plant."
They decided to solve this problem with another plant, the opium poppy, and began shipping large amounts of opium to China instead of silver and other valuable metals that the Chinese had previously asked for. The Chinese, not being entirely thrilled with the whole of the country vanishing under a haze of burning opiate fumes, tried to regulate or ban the trade to little appreciable effect, the East India Company being ruthless in finding loopholes in every regulation that was passed. In the late 1830s, matters started to escalate rapidly, and the East India Company ordered a fleet of 6 iron-hulled dedicated warships, the first of which, the Honourable East India Company ship Nemesis, was laid down in August 1839. She was built rapidly, being launched in late November of the same year, displacing around 1,000 tons and powered by a pair of 60-horsepower steam engines that drove a set of paddle wheels. The small vessel was relatively lightly armed, with a pair of 32-pounder guns, 5 6-pounders, and 1 multi-barreled Congreve rocket launcher, along with 10 small swivel guns for anti-personnel work. But she was agile, and had a shallow draft, a sliding wooden keel, allowing her to sail through the deep seas, and the first truly watertight compartments found on a ship. Capable of about 10 knots under either steam or sail, for which she carried a pair of fully rigged masts, and costing just under £29,000, she was commissioned in March 1840, and was very much an off-the-books ship for her day, not being listed in the East India Company's regular inventory of ships, and crewed by an officer corps that was drawn from ex-Royal Navy personnel. With the escalation of matters in the First Opium War, which started in the naval element, of all things, with Royal Navy warships firing on a British merchantman that then came under the protection of the Chinese, which led to a rather one-sided naval battle. Nemesis thus headed east, arriving in the area in late 1840. Along the way, her easily patched iron hull and watertight compartments had allowed her to survive hitting some rocks with a fair degree of ease before heading in for repairs, although her iron hull messing with the compass had probably been what made her run aground in the first place. Later, hitting severe storms caused cracks to appear in some of her hull plates, and much was subsequently then learned about how to brace and secure an iron hull in the efforts that were made to prevent them spreading. Finally, making it to the Chinese coast somewhat slower thanks to a massive accretion of marine growth, she nonetheless was heavily involved with a series of battles with the Chinese forces, destroying, crippling or capturing numerous war junks and bombarding numerous fortifications. Post-battle analysis was favourable. When she was dry-docked in Bombay, it was reported that her lower hull displayed numerous dents, scrapes and marks, indicating that she'd been repeatedly hit or run past rocks and other underwater obstructions in the shallow estuaries and rivers of China, and whilst this left her lower hull looking like a moonscape, it had not impaired her fighting or sailing capabilities in the way that such incidents would have torn up a wooden-hulled ship. One other feature of her action would cause a brief and premature rush towards iron warships. When she was hit in the hull, the shot had simply punched a small and easily patched hole in the ship without much in the way of splinters. Unfortunately, what wasn't realised at the time was that the warm environment of the Chinese coast had led the iron plates to cross over the brittle ductile phase line of iron and act in the manner so observed. Subsequent iron-hulled warships in colder European conditions found cracks and splinters were very much still a thing, a matter which perplexed many until the physics and chemistry of the situation were realised, and the first generation of iron-hulled warships were rapidly turned into troop transports and other second-line duties. Nemesis herself was subsequently retasked to anti-piracy operations in the Western Pacific before being relocated to the East India Company's stronghold of, surprisingly enough, India, where she took part in numerous other military actions over the following decade or so. Exactly what befell her in the end is something of a mystery, in no small part caused by the use of the name Nemesis for numerous other vessels in the latter part of the 19th century, including several that belonged to the East India Company. But such indications as there are seem to suggest that she was taken out of service around about 1855, with her machinery recovered for use in another vessel, possibly a similarly named successor, with the hull itself left to rust away somewhere on an Indian river.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.